Okay, here's my next project. I bought another one of these General Electric Great Awakening 4885s off of eBay. I bought this one for $15 plus $10 shipping, and I'm pretty sure I'll be able to fix it. Here's the situation. It doesn't turn on. The buttons are not responsive. If you watch my other YouTube video, you'll see what the problem is, that those contacts go bad. But what I'm going to do to this is I'm going to give it a full restoration, including new capacitors. This particular radio is in really good shape. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to get it. But even at $15, it's a good value. Label's in good shape. Battery contacts are not bad. All the rubber feet are present. When you look at the case, very good shape. And the fluorescent indicator is really bright. Also, all the paint and such on the switches are in great shape. So this video will walk you through a whole bunch of things. So go ahead and follow along as I do a complete restoration on this radio. There will be some people that disagree, but the way I recap things is I buy these 1,000 piece capacitor assortment kits off of Amazon. I fully realize these are not necessarily the highest of quality. My thought is, though, that replacing capacitors that are 40 years old, especially since I've seen a lot of these radios have capacitors that have failed, makes sense to go ahead and just switch them out. It's going to most likely outlive me, and if it outlives me, that's all that's necessary at this point. Also, I have a collection of different speakers from different radios. What I have found is that the Great Awakening actually has much better sound quality when you replace the speakers. So depending on the speaker that's in there, how it sounds, we might put a different one in. This one might be a little small, but we'll see. I think it's a 3-inch, and usually you can tell if a speaker has good bass and good sound if it has the magnet around the edge of it versus something like this. This is actually a 4-inch speaker, but if it just has something like that, it probably is not going to have a lot of bass, which is most likely what's in there, which I'll swap out for something with a magnet. Done this before on my other Great Awakenings, and it really makes it sound a lot better. Okay, I removed the 6 screws on the bottom, and my first observation is that this is an extremely clean unit. Other than the keypad going bad, which we'll take a look at, I don't see a lot of dust or anything, so might actually be a low hour type of unit. Looking at the speaker, I think the one on the right will go in just fine. We're going to have to do some sound tests, but I think that is a 3-inch, which should go in just fine with some washers and things like that. So we're going to take the keypad off, and let's take a look and see what it looks like. Okay, upon taking the keyboard apart, just like the others, this foam thing is disintegrating. It has dust all over, it's filthy, and these contacts right here are rusted out, but the pad, the top parts appear to be okay. What I did is I took a screwdriver and I hot wired it, and sure enough, it's working. What I've noticed is the tone control doesn't have much variation. Plus, I was right, the speaker that's in here is actually not that good. It sounds very flat. But the radio's working, even the AM is working, and the FM. So that's a good sign. Even though we're going to replace all the caps, I would guess that there's around 18 of them total. They're everywhere in here. But once we get this board out, it won't be too bad. But yeah, I'm not happy with this built-in speaker. Sounds very hollow. I just noticed that the clock now is having a strange time on it. I don't think it's the display itself per se, because when I changed this to the station, it seems to be fine. So if I'm a betting person, there are capacitors in here near the main chip. It's kind of hard to see down there. I have a feeling there's some weird capacitors in here. What I'm going to do, here's my strategy. Before I recap the whole radio, I'm going to fix this keypad, because if I make a mistake or this does not work right, it's going to kind of render the whole radio useless, because you need to have this working. And I've had problems with these. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this first. Then I will recap the radio. Hopefully we'll be able to get that to go away. Here's how you make a new foam backing behind the buttons, and you don't want to use this absorbent type foam. What I do is I take this foam, this is like the type of foam that you get like in a package or a video card. It's thicker than normal, but it's also not too thick. What you're going to do is you're going to take this, you're going to put this over here, and then you're going to put dots through each one of these holes. And when you're done with that, you'll get a drill and drill through them. I'll show you. Holes are drilled, and now this will go back in its place when we reassemble after the project is further along. I have another video out there, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but we're going to go ahead and use the procedure where I take these copper plated nails and I'm going to replace all of the contacts below these pads. I have a whole video that kind of details this out if you look on my channel, but we're going to go ahead and do that right now. I'll be back. Okay, all of the new contact pads have been replaced. I think this took me about 35 minutes. I'm getting good at this because I've done this a number of times. Right here I have a couple of the old ones. They almost look black, but they don't have much conductivity at all. There's a pile of them there, and then you'll see a bunch of the nails which I cut off. So that's done. We'll give it a test, and next step, which is to take the circuit board off of the radio. All right, now we're entering kind of the second big phase here. Took off the screws that hold the circuit board. I also just cut a couple wires back here, which I'll end up resoldering. I'm going to replace all the capacitors. Okay, there's probably about 15 of them. There's a couple real tricky ones that are in the back there. We're going to replace them all. There's even one right here. So we're going to get them all. I'll be back midway. What I like to do is I like to do what I call a sanity check. Every couple of caps I like to plug it in, just make sure it's still working. So we can still do that because I have the old speaker still attached. Okay, those are all the old capacitors. Everything in here has been replaced. Not too bad. I had to be careful with some of the wires and such, and I resoldered everything back in place. There's a couple non-polarized capacitors. Non-polarized don't have a positive or negative, so what you do is you take two higher value caps, solder the negatives together, and then you put the two positives in. And there's one down here for the tone control. There's two of them that are soldered together where there used to be one. And then there's one back by the power supply. Kind of hard to see, but it's right down there. There's two little ones there because that was a non-polarized. So got them all in. The performance is great. And interestingly, when I try that issue with the clock, right now it's on the clock setting, PM. It doesn't seem to be doing a problem. And I suspect it was the capacitor that was down here by the main chip, because one of these actually comes up at about 10 microfarads when it's actually rated at 100. So I wouldn't say these caps were in terrible shape in general, but there were some that were drifting. Also, the tone seems to be a little bit more full. The only effective way to clean a speaker grill is to get a toothbrush and put warm water and just scrub inside the grill itself. Also run the toothbrush around all other little spots, including down here where the tone controls and such are, and on the sides. Got to be careful not to get water. I would not submerge it. Also, there's some felt here, but it's going to dry out just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a good scrubbing. Then I'll clean it off with some Windex. These buttons have all sorts of crud and debris. I'm going to clean the heck out of these as well using a toothbrush. Make sure they don't go down the drain. Alright, buttons are back in. Make sure they're all the right direction and in the right place. This foam backing is in, and the little plastic pieces are actually poking through the holes, which is what you want. We're going to go ahead and mount it back to the actual keypad. I took the old speaker out, and while it looks like it's high quality, it absolutely has just flat mid-range sound. This particular speaker I soldered in, and it looks like it's smaller, but it's actually the same. It has extremely good fidelity and bass, and once we put it back in the lid here, we'll give this a final test. Speaker is in. What I did is I used hot glue around the edge, and then I just got some washers and spacers. When you tighten those screws, do not tighten them a lot. Even though there's like little rubber grommets and washers that go around, the posts are brittle and will snap right off. I've seen it happen before, so just don't tighten them too tight, but just enough to give it some more stability. Alright, I'm putting the knobs back on. I've put everything back together. Sometimes the little things don't stay on, they keep falling off. So you just put a little bit of Kleenex or paper towel, then you push it down and it's in. One thing I didn't show is that I did take a little WD-40 and I sprayed all the potentiometers prior to putting the lid back on. I also made sure I got the button in the back for the power loss alarm. There's like a power failure tone switch. I did all of that. Some people will say, why are you using WD-40 and not like a deoxit or something? Well, I have found out that that when you use WD-40, not only does it last a lot longer, it actually puts a little bit of petroleum back into the circuit board that may have shrunken where the resistance pads have been, and I find that it just brings it back to life. So I've been using WD-40 for years. Just a little shot though. I mean, you don't overdo it, but that then makes these things move nice and smooth. We'll do another final walkthrough in a moment. I noticed the cord is just a little bit brittle. It's not too bad, but I'm going to show you another tip, and it has to do with WD-40. And I have seen a number of YouTube videos where people have said that WD-40 puts petroleum back into plastics and electronic components. So here's what I do. Put a little on a paper towel, and you just run it along the wire. Don't wipe it out. Let it settle in. Wait about a day, and you're going to have a very flexible, pliable power cord, nearly back to normal. All right, just put a little, again, just WD-40 on the cord. What it's going to do is soften it up and make it almost like it's brand new again. Okay, just a final walkthrough. Radio's all cleaned up, works really good. The buttons are working fine. There's no antenna hooked up, but if I turn this on, we have really good sound. In fact, there's even a reasonable amount of bass coming off of this, and a lot of it is because of the tone circuit and also because of that speaker with the magnets. Very good sound. If I go to AM,
an equally rascally Lascar sailor, both of them familiar with Kuwait.
AM has really, really good tone quality as well. Okay, if I turn this off, and we are now in time mode. Let's say I want to reset the time to 9:32 p.m. p.m. Enter. Now it says 9:32. Let's say I want to set the wake time. Right now it's set for 5 a.m., but let's say we want to make it 7 o'clock a.m. We don't hit the p.m. There you go. Now it's set. If we want to set the second wake timer, let's say we want to make it at 11:15 p.m. 11:15 p.m. Now the alarm 2 is set. When we go to radio, as I said, I don't have a antenna hooked up, but if I go to direct entry, it's going directly to the frequencies. Only 95.9 comes in well on FM. A couple other notes. I did do some spot checks on the capacitors. I would say most of them had about a 25% tolerance, which probably isn't too bad because even the caps I put in were 20%. But there were 3 capacitors that were probably over 75%, that were like 20 microfarads instead of 100, or they were 160 microfarads versus 270, or so there were some definitely that were going bad. This will probably now be my regular clock radio that I'll use down here. This is the 4880, which I also did a complete restore to a while back. Problem is, this does not have good tone quality. It's not that it doesn't have a tone switch, it just does not put out really a fidelity type audio signal, so the amp is very basic, but this really sounds great. It's a one heck of a good sounding radio when it's working. So hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, you're free to put them down below. I think the way I do my videos is probably a little looser and a little bit less planned, so I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you soon for another video of some sort.